Thank you for joining the meeting of the RTC's Bus Shelter and Bench Advisory Committee. Vice Chair Ahart, staff is ready for you to begin the meeting.
Thank you, Reagan. Good afternoon. Vice Chair Shannon Aharts for the record. I'd like to call to order the April 15, 2021 meeting of the RTC's Bus Shelter and Bench Advisory Committee. RTC staff will begin with a roll call of the committee members and introduce staff on the line.
Thank you, Vice Chair Aharts. This is Reagan Lively, Management Analyst for the RTC for the record. I will be calling your name in alphabetical order. Please confirm your attendance as I read your name. Vice Chair Shannon Aharts?
Here.
Carl Anderson?
Here.
Thank you. Audrey Asalen?
Here.
Vincent Richardson?
Here.
Rick Skipton?
Here.
Thank you. Also, please note that we have several RTC staff on the line for today's meeting. This includes Mr. Carl Scarborough, Director of Transit Amenities and Technical Equipment, Mr. Nathan Goldberg, Manager of Transit Planning, Mr. Scott Edelblut, Transit Amenities Supervisor, Mr. Jim Champeau, Transit Mobility Program Supervisor, Ms. Deborah Reardon, Principal Transportation Planner, Mr. Roger Johnson, Vehicle Maintenance Supervisor, Mr. Robert Palumbo, Safety and Security Compliance Supervisor, and Ms. Ellen Marcel, Manager of Transit Amenities. Thank you. Vice Chair Aharts.
Thank you, Reagan. The first item on the agenda is citizens' participation. Mr. Scarborough.
Carl, I believe you are still on mute.
And I did it again. Sorry. Thanks, Shannon, members of the committee. Carl Scarborough, RTC Director of Transit Amenities and Technical Equipment, for the record. The first item on the agenda is to conduct your first citizens participation. As you know, on March 22nd, 2020, the State of Nevada Executive Department issued Declaration of Emergency Directive 006, which suspended the requirement to have a physical location for public meetings. Pursuant to Directive 006 and for the health and safety of the community, this meeting is being held telephonically. To allow for public participation, the RTC is accepting public comments via email at publiccomments@rtcsnv.com. Comments can be submitted to be read aloud or to be added directly to the written record. Ms. Reagan Lively will read the public comments received by the RTC.
Thank you. This is the first time set aside for public comment. Comments will be limited to the first 500 words, within the remaining words to be included in the written record. Do we have any comments?
Thank you, Vice Chair Aharts. Reagan Lively, Management Analyst for the RTC for the record. There are no public comments at this time.
Thank you. Well, we'll move along to the next item. Item number 2, which is the to approve the February 18, 2021 meeting minutes. Are there any comments or questions from the committee? If there are no questions or comments, do we have a motion on the floor?
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 18, 2020. Dr. Richardson, for the record.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is to receive a presentation on the proposed transit service changes. Mr. Nathan Goldberg will be providing this presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee. Nathan Goldberg, Manager of Transit Planning, for the record. I am here today to give you an overview of the proposed transit service changes for implementation on August 8th, 2021, and kind of a description overview of the 45-day public comment period, which opened today. Next slide, please. While we are out for public comment, we plan to educate the community that we have received approximately $303 million in federal aid to dedicate to transit and paratransit services. These proposed service changes are also part of Onboard, our community's long-term mobility plan. In addition, the proposed service changes will connect approximately 185,000 residents who previously did not have access to transit service into the transit service area to employment opportunities, schools, and other essential services. These enhancements will help provide more equitable service across the valley. This is just one of 3 service enhancements we plan to do over the next 2 years. Next slide, please. Covering the 4 pillars of access, efficiency, innovation, and equity, this service changes implementation will improve access through the largest geographic expansion of transit service that we've done since 1993. This includes 2 new routes, several extensions, and other services that will introduce basic fixed route transit access to those that are currently unserved but need it. In terms of efficiency, this will introduce an innovative pilot that will provide on-demand service as a paratransit fixed route hybrid, and it will do so in the Southwest Enterprise West Henderson area, and will help reduce the cost per passenger of traditional paratransit and improve access to fixed route transit. In terms of innovation, implementation of the first Transit Lab initiative, this approach will provide faster and more frequent services to some of the busiest bus stops along Route 206 Charleston, one of the RTC's busiest corridors. This is anticipated to have up to 25% faster run times and 50% more frequent service. It will also allow us to pilot a software to improve scheduling and on-time performance. For equitability, this service change will demonstrate continued commitments to equity with an established community by restoring weekend services on a couple of existing routes, Route 207 Alta Stewart, 209 Vegas Owens, and also by enhancing weekend frequency on routes 210, which is Lake Mead Boulevard, Route 203, which covers Spring Mountain DI and Lamb, and Saturday's additional Saturday frequency on Route 119 Simmons Koval. Next slide, please. The map we're looking at here kind of provides a high-level overview of the geography that we'll be covering, kind of a valley-wide look at what we're all proposing. So you see the dot, just kind of covering what you're looking at. The dots on the screen are known paratransit clients that will be added to the paratransit service area. In terms of the kind of the blue, purple, and red lines, the blue lines are the routes that we just discussed that are going to have added weekend frequencies. The purple is Route 206 Charleston, where we're going to be working on the Transit Lab. And then the red lines are various new routes and extensions. In terms of the kind of the color blocks, you have the Key Lime area, if you will, kind of down in the Southwest and West Henderson areas is where the microtransit pilot is being looked at being implemented. The pink areas are new paratransit service areas that will be added, and then of course the kind of the yellow or goldish color there are the existing paratransit service areas. Next, please. In terms of what is all being accomplished here, this is kind of a high-level overview of that. For a total additional cost of just under $7 million, $6.9 million, this will bring service hours back to about 4% below pre-COVID levels, and with it, bring 185,000 residents who previously did not have transit access into the transit area, along with the statistics we see there on the screen. Over 20,000 of those are currently living at or below the poverty line, 18,000 senior citizens, 13,000 plus with disabilities, 79,000 non-white or Hispanic clients, and well over 300, almost 400 known paratransit clients, along with bringing in over 20,000 new jobs, access to 20,000 new jobs, access for approximately 7,000 resort corridor employees who currently do not have access to transit and now will. So if they wish to commute via transit to their jobs in the resort corridor, they would be able to do so. Dozens of new childcare facilities and schools, as well as a handful of new grocery stores. So providing some critical food access to those who need it most. Next, please. We have now kind of a series of slides here. This is the first of which you're looking at that goes over in detail each area, kind of bringing each area into a little bit of focus and kind of a high level overview of what that area all has and why these are the areas that were selected, why these were kind of the areas of the highest need. So the first of those you're looking at now, which is in the southwest kind of mountains edge area. There are a variety of route extensions, as well as a portion. You can see a portion of a new route that traverses east-west in the valley, primarily along the Cactus and Horizon Ridge alignments, but obviously it deviates from that a little bit where where the roadway or developments require that we do so at this point. But this area, one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing for the last several years in the valley, almost 70,000 residents, over 13,000 jobs, 4,000 resort corridor employees that live in this area, like I said, who now can have transit as an option to commute to work, along with 4 additional grocery stores. Next, please. This is also the area where we have selected to do the microtransit pilot project. This will serve as the mode of transportation for both fixed route and paratransit in the southwest and the southern expansion area. It's roughly 31 square miles and spans from just west of Fort Apache all the way over into kind of the almost into the Inspirada area of West Henderson. The goal of this project is really to merge paratransit and fixed route customers on microtransit vehicles so that customers can travel to locations within the microtransit zone or connect to a transit line where they can transfer to public transit to reach their final destination. The goal here is to combine combine efficiency and facilitate transit access for all residents of this area. It is also noteworthy that paratransit clients would have a complete journey from origin to destination, whereas like a fixed route client, they can get on the microtransit service, but if they need to leave that kind of key lime colored area, they would connect to a fixed route service and go from there. And paratransit clients would have that same ability to if they so chose, but they could also go point to point. Next, please. Next, we'll kind of look at the West Henderson area. Very similar to what we just covered with the Southwest in terms of the microtransit concept. It's the exact same thing, but this also brings a route extension or modification really, as well as a portion of that Cactus Horizon Ridge route that you see there kind of along the top, the red line that's along the top, providing access to the rapidly growing area in the neighborhood of the M, the new Costco, the Levi's, Amazon, Raiders facility. There's Pinecrest schools. There's a large amount of high density residential, just a kind of a super fast growing area. Again, you can see the statistics on the screen that kind of indicate what's going on there. So, a very good improvement for this area of West Henderson. Next, please. Continuing along the Horizon Ridge corridor, this is kind of closing a gap and offering additional connections to other routes in the area of Green Valley, Sun City, McDonald Ranch, and then kind of the South Stephanie, Gibson, and then Horizon Drive areas. Again, 11,000 residents, over 1,000 jobs, many resort corridor employees, and child care facilities as well. Next, please. In the Northwest, we have extended the CX to cover a portion of the Providence Sky Canyon area, as well as a portion of a new route that again, primarily traverses the Ann and Tropical alignment, but will divert up to catch a portion of this Providence Sky Canyon area as well. Another very rapidly growing area of the valley, over 30,000 residents, 800 jobs, and it connects many of the residents of that area to the services in that area, which tend to be along the kind of the Durango or the US 95 alignments. So they would be able to access those services via transit if they so chose, as well as connect into the rest of the system. Next, please. The opposite end of that Ann tropical alignment is what we're kind of looking at here now. And this extends services. Well, this not only has services along Ann and tropical, which we do not currently have for the majority of those corridors, and brings in services into the North Las Vegas and portions of Clark County area up in that neck of the woods that involve many of like the Amazon warehouses and Fanatics and other large-scale warehouse and light industrial employers, as well as some new housing that's going in. Next, please. Here we have the extension on the north part of Decatur. If you recall back a few slides, one of the things that was covered in that kind of southwest area, it was an extension of Decatur on the south end. This is also an extension of Decatur on the north end, up to the Grand Teton alignment and along a portion of Jones. There's the DMV, there's a post office, there are other high density residential developments that are either in or are in the process of going in along some of these corridors. So over 16,000 residents in this area, a few hundred employment opportunities, as well as connections into the rest of the system. Next, please. Here we have kind of an overview of the frequency additions, as well as the transit lab experience for the next couple of slides here. On the various blue routes that you see there, we have Route 207 Alta Stewart, Route 209 Vegas Owens, where we are restoring Saturday and Sunday service. That was something that was drawn back at the beginning of the pandemic, as we had very much a reduced demand, and we're looking to make reductions to service. Now we are restoring those services. Along with on Route 210 Lake Mead, Route 203 as well, and Route 119, where we are adding weekend frequencies. Highlighting in the case of Lake Mead, Route 210 going from mostly every 30-minute frequency on the weekends to every 20 minutes. So that's a very high volume corridor, and that's a good enhancement for us. In terms of Route 206 Charleston and the transit lab, let's go to the next slide for that. I think that covers that a little more in depth. Thank you. We're looking at what we're basically describing here as a blue and gold concept. This is similar to the way the Deuce and the SDX operated on the Strip for many years, where you have one route that hits every single stop along the way, and then another that hits limited stops and goes a little bit faster. So this is kind of built off that type of a concept. So the blue route would traverse from Nellis to Rainbow, and in between those points, hit every stop along the way. Whereas the gold would continue on to the far east and far west portions of the valley, and in those extended portions, hit every stop along the way. But where the blue and the gold overlay, the gold would only stop at more significant transfer points or high volume stops. So it provides someone who wants to say you live at Nellis and Charleston and you work out at downtown Summerlin, you'd want to choose the gold, right? The gold would get you there much quicker because you're going to be bypassing many of those stops in that shared area. Whereas if you're just making an everyday trip, maybe a mile or mile and a half down the way, you might be better off with the blue, as it would get you closer to your destination. Or you may be in a situation where you have a shared stop, or you don't mind a little bit of a walk, then either one, whichever one arrives first. So we feel that this concept can offer us up to 25% faster service. It has allowed us at a reduced cost to go from 15-minute frequency at certain stops to 10-minute frequency at certain stops, which is a big deal for many, allowing them more freedom of movement. And in addition, it just basically, I think this allows us to take one of the busiest corridors in the valley and to really make that a better experience. Next slide, please. It also allows us to pilot a new technology. This is called Onboard, not to be confused with the Onboard Plan. This is a different technology product also called Onboard. It is basically what you see on the screen there. It is tablets that go on the vehicles, and they report to the vehicles in real time, kind of what their status is in terms of where they are with their schedule, or if it was headway deployment, how far they are from the vehicle in front of them or behind them. That allows the driver to adjust their behavior accordingly, within the law, obviously, but just gives that driver kind of at a glance a snapshot of where they're at, rather than trying to dig through their schedule and figure out what time they're supposed to be. They can just at a glance look over and know that if they're at a time point and they need to wait a little bit longer, it'll let them know that. If they're getting a little behind, it'll also let them know that too. And just like I said, kind of react accordingly. So we're excited about getting this technology going and seeing what it can bring us. Next slide, please. As noted, there's a 45-day public comment period on what we have all kind of discussed here as what the proposals are. We're very excited about these. It's nice after a little over a year or more here of having some positive news rather than reducing service. It's always nice to be able to offer something new and hopefully better for everyone. So I'm very excited about that. The 45-day period lasts from April 15th until May 31st. And along with kind of the goals and the tools that you see on the screen there, we have some pretty aggressive goals in terms of our outreach. We would like to connect with at least 20% of those 185,000 potential new clients, which is a little over 30,000 individuals. And we would like to receive input from almost 5,000 of those individuals. And we will also be reaching out to every single paratransit client, every single known paratransit client that is going to be brought into the service area, and hearing from them as well. So that is going to be done over this 45-day period. I believe we already have almost 40 events scheduled in some way, shape, or form, whether they be at our facilities or out on the street, or virtual events, meetings such as this one and the like. So it's going to be a very busy time, very exciting time. And with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
Yes, this is Rick Skipton. I had a couple of questions. Excuse me. When you started the conversation, you said that there was a grant from the federal government. I thought you said $300 million. Is that correct?
$303 million. I believe that came. It was either 2 or 3 different CARES Act. I know the CARES Act, and I'm not sure what the acronyms on them all were, but there were a couple different, basically stimulus packages to public transit agencies and other similar type agencies that came about, and so that was what that was in reference to.
So you detailed here about a $7 million expenditure. The other $290 million will be used for other things then? Is that?
So the 7 million is in addition to what our budget would have been. We could probably get you a detailed. We can definitely get you a detailed list of how that kind of all breaks down, because I know like there's multiple departments that each have a budget thrown into it. I can only speak to mine. Mine is typically in the neighborhood of between 115 and 120 million. So that 7 million would be in addition to that. But then, you know, Carl's team, the amenities team, they have a budget that goes along with that that's separate, as well as safety and security and other departments that all add up to equal the total transit expenditure, if you will.
And Nathan, if I can jump in, you know, before the pandemic, we were seeing our costs as an agency grow faster than our revenue source. A lot of our services are contracted out, and those go up every year. We were anticipating, you know, a point in the future where we would either have to cut service, find another way to cut cost, or find a way to raise revenue. That was kind of what was staring us in the face, and it was coming potentially in a couple of years. And then the pandemic happened, and that made that problem even worse. Because of the decreased ridership, we cut pretty aggressively over the past year, you know, just trying to maintain the status quo. We eliminated some routes like the Strip and Downtown Express and the Westcliff Airport Express, where there was other service that could provide the same transportation connections. Now that we're kind of getting beyond that a little bit, we're seeing our ridership start to come back. We're looking forward, and we're going to add back a lot of those service hours that we cut, not all of them, but a lot. And we're going to expand into communities that have been underserved for a while now, particularly the southwest part of the valley and some parts to the north. So we're still being very cautious. We're still not back to our pre-pandemic level of spending. And while we did get a significant pot of revenue from the federal government, we want to try to use that, grow smart, and help stabilize our financial picture for a longer period going forward, and give ourselves more time as a community to figure out what we want to do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I just didn't, I wanted to connect the dots between the 300 million, which was presented in the beginning, and then when we went through the presentation, you know, there was no adding up of that. So I just wanted to understand that.
So
thank you, Carl. So
yeah,
second question, if I might. So Carl, you're just mentioning that, you know, I know that you pretty aggressively cut routes and limited routes during the last year or so in response to lower ridership. So now you're adding some back, not all, and you're expanding in other areas. So it's fair to say that you're deciding to redistribute some of the resources from where they were to new areas to help expand the coverage of the RTC?
Yes. And then as ridership comes back, we have a lot of tools to be able to go back and supplement service to some of those places where we've cut. So, you know, we've talked about concepts like, you know, adding buses in to portions of route during peak periods to help carry loads. So there's a lot of things that we can look at to make sure that we're not dropping service as riders come back in some of those areas that we've cut back.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's always exciting to see additional areas being served. So that's great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee?
Hi there. This is Jamie Farrar. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I have a question as far as directly for paratransit. Is there like any of this stimulus money and grants going directly to them as far as how their customers can be affected by that?
Nathan, do you want to take? Yeah.
I was going to say, so paratransit is tied directly to fixed route in terms of that the paratransit service area expands as the fixed route area expands. So in doing what we're doing here, we're adding a significant portion or a significant amount of to the paratransit service area from where it was. So it's being accomplished in that way. It also, with the microtransit pilot in the Southwest, we're able to offer a little bit of a different service that I think can help, both paratransit and fixed route clients out. So given that paratransit and fixed route kind of have that symbiotic relationship, that's I guess that's the way I would approach that. I don't know if there's anyone else from the RTC that can speak more to if there was specific money for other portions of paratransit that was more of a direct give.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, Nathan, this is Carl for the record. The only thing I would add is that our paratransit service area is covered by the size of our fixed route area. So that as we expand fixed route service, we automatically have to expand para. And while the money comes it is connected to both programs. So by these changes that we are making, there will be more people who are eligible for paratransit. And we'll be getting the benefit of that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Are there any other comments or questions on agenda item number 3? If not, we will move on to the next item. The next item on the agenda is to receive an update on the bus shelter painting and rehabilitation project. Mr. Scott Edelblut will be providing us this presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair Aharts. Mr. Scott Edelblut, Transit Amenities Supervisor for the RTC, for the record. The RTC Transit Amenities team has been hard at work coordinating and washing and painting 75 bus shelters across the valley. This is being done to help restore their appearance and beautify the sidewalks they reside on. Over time, our bus shelters become damaged from harsh weather, vehicle crashes, vandalism, and general wear and tear. Not only does this enhance the experience for many transit riders as they wait for their bus to arrive, it adds an extra degree of curb appeal to streets and neighborhoods. We have a brief video to share so you can see the progress for yourself. Go ahead and start it, Reagan. Thanks. Thank you, Reagan. This concludes my presentation, and I will answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any comments or questions from the committee? If there are none, we'll move on to the next item. Item number 5. And this is to receive a demonstration of GIS data used to identify obstructions within the right-of-way. Mr. Jim Champeau will be providing us this presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair Aharts. Jim Champeau, RTC Transit Mobility Program Supervisor for the record. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everybody see?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So during the summer of 2020, the RTC Mobility Training Team embarked on a project to digitally map the entire RTC fixed route transit system for barriers that could prevent a person with disabilities using a mobility device from accessing fixed route transportation. As part of this process, we collaborated with the RTC Information Technology Department to modify a web-based software program called Arc Collector so that we could plot and record the environmental and architectural barriers that were located in the community. We also collaborated with the RTC Transit Amenities Department to do a full audit of RTC's fixed route transit stops to confirm which stops were or were not ADA accessible. This data was added to our collector and was shared with the RTC Streets and Highways Department so that collaborations could be made between the RTC and different municipal jurisdictions so that the barriers that have been identified could be corrected. As an example, barrier information was shared with RTC Streets and Highways, who in turn assisted us in contacting Clark County Public Works to have a tree removed, which was growing in the right-of-way, blocking the sidewalk. Due to this collaboration, the barrier was able to be corrected, which allowed a customer with a mobility device to be able to access his closest fixed route transit stop. Modifications are currently being made to our collector, which will allow us to plot all barriers that have been corrected by local entities. The Mobility Training Department continues to share this data and is currently collaborating on the Regional Bikeway and Sidewalk Inventory, as well as the Maryland Parkway BRT project. I'll now give you a look at our collector and the work that has been completed to date by the RTC Mobility Training Department. So, as my boss likes to say, looks like a big flower garden. So what we did, due to COVID, myself and my staff, we work with customers with disabilities and teach them how to use regular public transportation or fixed route transit. So we go out with them one-on-one and ride with them to the destinations that they need to get to teach them how to get there. Some are paratransit customers. A large portion of our customers are paratransit, but some are not. Some want to use fixed route because they feel it's more convenient. As part of this process, when we were out working with them, we come across a lot of different things that were getting in the way of somebody being able to get to a stop or making them have to find a different way to get somewhere. So we thought during this time when COVID happened, it would be a good idea to come out and start this project. So as you can see here, this is a map of the entire valley, and we'll zoom in here to a slot. So this is down by Sunset and Decatur area where the Mobility Training Center is. And what we have done is we have went out and driven the entire fixed route transit line, and we did it bus line by bus line. And we're looking different things that jump out at us that could be problematic. So as you can see, there are some green lines, some red lines. So the green lines is a clear path of travel for a person. So a person using a mobility device could get through a sidewalk. There was no problems. As you can see on some of these places there are some red lines. That's a place where there's a missing sidewalk. The little blue are our bus stops. And then we have other icons that we would put on, such as client location. So a place where a customer that we knew that wanted to use transit and was having a difficult time. So we put their location in. Destinations that they told us they wanted to go to. We were looking at construction, fire hydrants, light poles, no curb cuts, non-ADA bus stops, sidewalk broken, sidewalk missing, uneven sidewalk, signs in the middle of the sidewalk, traffic signal issues that were reported to us, utility infrastructure, vegetation that was growing, steep, excessive inclines, those kind of things. So section.
Jim, this is Reagan. You're breaking up real bad.
Over here. Oh, am I? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry. Technology, so much fun. Okay, so where we're at here, we're looking at a pole that was in a sidewalk. So we were going out marking all of these issues into our collector so that we're able to pass this information on to the local jurisdictions that could be in charge of them to see if there was a way to complete this. We were also going in on the left-hand side and putting in a measurement so we know what that clear path of travel is. So we had a 30-inch clearance. So we know that a person that had a larger mobility device might be running into problems there. Up here, another example. So we had a place here where the sidewalk had caved in around a pole. So again, getting a hold of the local entities and seeing if they can come out that and repair that to make sure that our paths of travel to and from our fixed route stops are accessible. As Nathan was talking a little bit earlier, with the expansion of the fixed route service, and looking forward to adding all of that into this mapping system as well. So this is a project that's going to be a work in progress. Myself and my staff looking at these areas and trying to improve them. We're also working on another feature for this right now so that once a problem that we have is fixed by a local entity, we're going to be able to add another layer on here and be able to put in all of those points that have been fixed so that we can keep track of all of this as well. So it was took us about 3 months to go through all of this and to do it. And it's something that we feel is going to be very useful for our clients. But we just wanted to be able to show this to you today and show you to help people with disabilities within our community. So that concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
This is Jamie Farrar for the record. One of the main reasons why I joined this committee, not the main reason, but one of the main reasons is to be a voice for people with disabilities on the RTC, that ride the RTC. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this. This is amazing.
You're welcome.
That's something that people within the able-bodied society as a whole in general don't think about unless like you're faced with a disability like yourself or something. There's a lot of access points that are accessible, but there's a lot of access points that are not, that should be. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee?
Rick Skipton for the record. Great job. Appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? We can move on to the next item. The next item on the agenda is to receive a presentation on the regional walkability plan. Ms. Deborah Reardon will be giving us this presentation.
Great, thank you so much. I'm Deb Reardon, a Principal Transportation Planner from the RTC's Metropolitan Planning Organization for the record. And today I'll share a short overview of the Regional Walkability Plan. And at the end, I'll also be asking for input from the committee on any challenges and opportunities for improving pedestrian access to transit stops. Next slide, please. So first, just a couple highlights of what we hope the plan will achieve. So first, the plan will make short trips easier. So this is a goal of the onboard mobility plan. And those short trips also include the first and last mile access to transit stops. Before I continue, I'm getting some feedback. Does anyone else hear that? Okay, it must be on my end, sorry.
Deb, this is Reagan Lively for the record. You may want to try adjusting your volume on your computer. Make it less loud,
okay.
And see if that works.
Okay, is that better?
It seems to be.
Okay, all right. Oops, sorry about that. Thank you, Reagan. Okay, so where was I? So the second Secondly, the plan is important for improving community health. So really working to integrate walking and physical activity more into our daily routines. Additionally, walkability really supports transportation equity. So we know that across the region, about 28% of our population has no or limited access to a car. So pedestrian improvements can also help people of all abilities, older adults and youth, who don't drive or are unable to drive to get to where they want to go. And so the plan also seeks to improve pedestrian comfort and safety, so working towards reducing the number of pedestrian crashes. And then lastly, the plan will really serve as a blueprint for a connected and accessible network without gaps. So next slide, please. So planning started in the fall of 2020 and will go through the end of this calendar year. And we started off with data collection, really learning about the past plans that have happened, current efforts, and future needs. And right now, we're really between steps 2 and 3. So step 2, developing an overall vision and goals for walkability for the region. And then step 3, identifying priority pedestrian zones. So those we're defining as the locations where people walking and rolling can really be prioritized in street design. So this phase will also include identifying that overall pedestrian network and developing related street typology. So what do those roads that are people-centered really look like? So building on that in step 4, we'll be developing strategies to work to implement the vision and goals and those priority pedestrian zones. And then lastly, really working closely with the local agencies. The plan will include an overall action plan. And we really hope to integrate some of the recommendations of the plan immediately into upcoming roadway projects. So next slide, Reagan. Thanks. So just a quick recap of some of the things we're hearing so far. So we know that there's a lot of great work that's already happening to improve pedestrian facilities. So as you can see in this image, the sidewalk, streetscape, and crosswalk improvements that are happening in downtown Las Vegas have really created a great walkable environment. And similar efforts like this are being made through other downtowns and urban centers. However, we know that not every roadway is as walkable. Reagan, next slide. Thanks. So we've also heard plenty of challenges across the region. And so distance is really an issue in a couple ways. First, the wide roads result in long crossing distances to get across the street, as you can see in this image. Our suburban land use patterns result in long distances between destinations. And then also, intersections are spaced pretty far apart in a lot of cases. So through input so far, people have also shared that that there's needs for more comfortable sidewalks as well as bus stops. And I know that there's a lot of work already happening there, but there's always more need for shade, seating, and places to rest, especially in the heat, as well as lighting. So we also heard a need for wider, more accessible sidewalks that accommodate people using mobility devices, as well as just walking side by side. And this extra space was also identified as a need given our current social distancing. And then just 2 more challenges that we heard. First is a gap in maintenance funding for supporting these kinds of enhancements that are outside of maybe master plan communities. And then lastly, we heard that accessible passive travel are also a big challenge within construction zones. So something we're working to fix ahead of when the plan is implemented. Next slide, please. So the outreach we've done so far, we've had several meetings with a technical and citizen advisory committee, which actually includes Aaron Green from this group. We've done a bunch of presentations and meetings, much like today. And then we did some online outreach. So we had an online survey with over 500 responses, an interactive input map, a virtual community meeting. And our next phase, actually, it's pretty fun. We're going to be working on some walk audits next. Next slide. So 6 community walk audits are planned across the Las Vegas Valley and then also in Mesquite at locations that we felt really had high pedestrian demand and need. And so this is really a chance for more hands-on learning about walkability and developing solutions with the community. And so the findings that from these audits will be shared with local agencies and will also inform plan recommendations. So as you can see on the slide, the events include a virtual training that we're holding in about a week and a half on April 26th, and then some optional self-guided walk audits to be done on your own schedule. And then lastly, contributing to a group virtual walk audit meeting that'll be held between May 6th and May 18th. There's various dates across all the jurisdictions. So as community leaders, we really hope that some members of this committee will join us or share this information with other pedestrian advocates. Registration is at the bottom of the screen, rtcsnv.com/walkability to register. Next slide. So during our remaining time, it would really be great to gather any initial thoughts or feedback you might have related to walkability. Any things that you've seen really work well, challenges that you face when getting to and from transit or to other destinations, maybe things that you'd really like to see in the future, or if there are any particular locations that you would like us to focus on. Any of that input would be really helpful. Next slide. So there's my contact information as well as our project webpage. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to the vice chair and would like to, as I said, hear any feedback that the group has.
Thank you, Deborah. Are there any comments or questions or feedback for Deborah?
This is Vince Richardson for the record. I thought you did a wonderful job. I would just like to have, if there's a way we can get a copy of that so we can provide feedback.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I'll make sure I can route it through Reagan.
Finally.
Great, thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? If there are no more comments, we'll move on to the next item. The next item on the agenda is to receive a presentation from RTC staff on COVID-19 transit data. Mr. Roger Johnson and Mr. Scarborough will be giving this presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Roger Johnson, Vehicle Maintenance Supervisor for the record. I'd like to provide a brief update on a Climate Comfort Technologies electronic air cleaner project that we're installing into our fleet vehicles. It'll be followed by a brief video, and then I will pass it along. The RTC is utilizing the Climate Comfort Technologies ionization product as a critical piece to our COVID-19 response and our 14-point safety plan. Our intent is to offer the RTC's ridership a safe, cleaner, and more pleasing environment. We're quickly outfitting our entire fleet, over 800 fixed route and paratransit vehicles. Ionization is a widely adopted technology in many applications, including mass transit vehicles, hospitals, casinos, schools, aviation, and others. Ionization has been proven to be safe and efficient in elevated concentrations against aerosolized microbiological contaminants and small particles in occupied spaces, such as our transit vehicles. We are prioritizing installations and performing them as quickly as possible. Our fixed route fleet is nearly 90% complete. Our paratransit fleet is 35% complete, and we are targeting to be finished with installations by the middle of May. The maintenance on these items is very minimal. The emitters of the ionization is visually inspected and wiped down during routine maintenance, and the emitters require replacement only once every 4 years. Reagan, if you could play the video, please.
Hi, I'm Roger Johnson with the RTC Fleet Department, and today I'm going to walk you through some of our process for installing a Climate Comfort Technologies air ionizer cleaner. First, we remove these panels from the air conditioning system and mount the bracket and the device. Next, we run power supply cables from a power source and connect the power supply to the device. Next, we reassemble all the panels. And lastly, we perform a test for the output.
Thank you, Reagan. This concludes my presentation, and I will now turn it over to Carl.
Thanks, Roger. And I'd just like to point out for anybody who's ridden the bus in July and August, you know what I'm talking about, but those ionizers also will eliminate odors. So that's hopefully something we'll be using for a long time. Excuse me. I wanted to, one of the things that during the pandemic, our paratransit ridership has gone down or went down. And we've been looking for, ways to help the community and pitch in. We've done things like food deliveries. And another thing that we've started on lately is we've actually been transporting people for vaccination clinics. Since March 4th, we've accommodated 23 socially distanced senior group rides where we'll pick up groups of seniors using one of our large coaches, and we'll take them down to the health district where they'll be vaccinated actually on board the coach, and then return them to their destination. We've expanded that in partnership with the health district to create the Vaccine Transportation Assistance Program, where people can actually book a ride on paratransit to go get their vaccine. And how it works is they call the program's phone number, schedule a ride, and they're booked usually about 2 weeks out for planning purposes. We'll pick the individual up at their door and then drop them off. Like the fixed route service, people are vaccinated on board the vehicle. We started that program March 23rd, and so far we've had about 15 rides. And then on March 26th, we announced that we're going to offer free paratransit rides to get vaccinated clients to the vaccine appointments. So if you're a paratransit customer, normally you pay a fare, but if you're going to a vaccine appointment, we're actually going to do that at no cost. So since March 26th, really just not quite 4 weeks, we've scheduled more than 80 trips. So that we're hoping this is a service that people will take advantage of. We should also mention that the Southern Nevada Health District vaccination sites are accessible via many of our fixed routes. In fact, we have an interactive map on our website at rtcsnv.com/coronavirus, and you can actually see where these vaccine sites are and what fixed routes go by there. So we're trying to find ways that we can pitch in and help with that. Also on the coronavirus front, we are looking at returning to full-time return to work for all of our employees on June 1st. We've been inching toward it with people working in and out a couple of days a week to minimize occupancy. Things we've been doing in the building is making sure our workspaces are 6 feet apart, that when we have people who are face-to-face, that we've put up plastic barriers to help protect them. And we're looking at our air filtration systems in the building as well, looking at air cleaners, similar to what Roger has introduced on the fleet side. And we're also looking at just upgrading the filter media to try to get everyone back safely. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. So, and that concludes our report.
Thank you, Roger and Carl. Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
Rick Skipton for the record. For Carl, I was just curious. I know that a number of positions at the RTC that were open when the pandemic hit were put on hold, and I'm wondering if those positions are now going to be reopened to be filled. And I'm specifically thinking of Ron's old position, honestly.
Yeah, and so a couple of things we've done. We did have a handful of employees that were furloughed during the pandemic because there was just nothing that we could have them do. We've made a commitment to bring all those furloughed employees back by the end of June. We're looking at that, and then we're looking at our vacancies. We are not automatically filling every vacancy. Like with our fixed route service, we're examining the need and the purpose for each position. So we are going to start posting and hiring some positions, but it's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, we'll move on to the next item. The next item on the agenda is to receive an update on the Community Relations Transit Team. Mr. Robert Palumbo will be giving us this presentation.
There we go, I found it. Robert Palumbo for the record. I am the Safety and Security Compliance Supervisor. I just want to give everyone an update for our most recent addition and change to our staffing deployment, which we call the Community Relations Transit Team, or CRTT for short. So back in November, the Safety and Security Team looked at its existing fixed route officers and was looking to make a change. So this program was internally funded with about $935,000 from our existing budget. The team comprises of 4 uniformed officers, and they're split into 2 teams, so it's 2 and 2. And the team's focused on promoting safety, enhancing community relations, providing exceptional customer service by opening the lines of communication with our riders and the community, whether through the RTC Ride mobile app or our Transit Watch app. The Las Vegas is a growing population and is a global tourist convention destination, so many people are unfamiliar with the RTC transit system. Thus, a major function of the CRT team initiative was to serve as ambassadors to assist all riders in creating a more enjoyable experience. The effectiveness has shown throughout the data that we have received so far, and this program again started in November on our last update, and so we have a little bit of data already. And then as of March 21, the CRT team has contributed to the following transit system data points that we've collected. Due to COVID, we have issued a little over 8,400 masks to the public. Whether they were riding without masks or didn't have access to them, they were issuing the masks directly to the public from our officers. They've had over 6,500 customer contacts. And those customer contacts could be anything from how do I get to this address, how do I purchase a ticket at the facility or on the coach or even at a stop on the strip. And then they've also contributed to a little over 8,800 removals while enforcing RTC policies throughout the Valley. So the CRT team program is an innovative effort in public transit, so it's fairly new in regards to other agencies as far as what we're doing specifically, and what their main focus is customer service and policy enforcement. And the already proving valuable for riders, operators, and the officers themselves. So we do have a little video on the next slide that will showcase some of their duties and interactions. So we can watch that now.
I strongly feel that this program is going to change a lot of things here in the transit system, and for the better. That's what we're hoping for. CRTT stands for Community Relations Transit Team. Our goal is basically to reach out towards the community on the coaches, basically tell them what's the Transit Watch app, how it works, the RTC mobile app. We're just there to have them feel safe riding the bus. A bunch of them tell us that they like to see us on the coaches.
I'm really a helping person in general, so I figured working security is you do your job, you secure, make sure everyone's safe while they're riding, but this is more of a community thing. When they see someone actually caring for their problems or any issues they might have, because they go through a lot, you don't know who you're dealing with on the buses. Just talking to someone and having that chance where you can actually communicate with them can change the way their day goes.
We're just trying to be out there for the community.
And one short note also, in the few months that we've had this rolling, we have received a great number of positive feedbacks from the community, and those feedbacks have come in through the phone system, through our call center, and also reported directly on our Transit Watch app or the Ride RTC app. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm open to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you, Robert. Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
Well, Rick Skipton again. I'm sorry if I missed this in the earlier part of your presentation. This is a contracted service to a third party, is that correct?
Yes, all of our security personnel that you see are contracted through a company called Marksman Security Corporation. That is correct.
So I'm just curious, was there any consideration partnering with Metro or some other organization? I'm just curious how that came about.
In regards to our partnership, we do have strong partnerships with Metro. We work closely with them, Downtown Area Command, and also the security chiefs throughout the valley. So we do have partnered directly with Metro. In regards to on-site security operations, we strictly stick with the contracted security personnel.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the committee? If not, the next item is to discuss topics of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Carl Scarborough again for the record. This is the time for the Bus Shelter and Bench Advisory Committee members to share any information about activities, meetings, news, and other topics of interest in an informal manner. While no action may be taken on the subjects discussed, this item provides an opportunity for the exchange of information and may serve as the forum to recommend future meeting agenda items.
Thank you, Carl. Are there any comments or questions or topics from the committee? If there are no questions or other comments or topics, we'll move on to the next item. This is the second time set aside for public comment. Just a reminder that the comments will be limited to the first 500 words, with the remaining words to be included in the written record. Do we have any comments?
Thank you. Again, Reagan Lively, Management Analyst for the record. There are no public comments at this time.
Thank you, Reagan. Just want to say thanks to all the presenters today. I think there was a lot of great information. Really appreciate your time. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 17. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting.